Hey guys, want to talk about jQuery traversing today. I'll be honest with you, I've already attempted to make this video last night and it was boring and I was not very excited, and so I decided to redo it. So hopefully I can keep the energy level up on this one here. So let's get started talking about jQuery traversing. I'm here on the page that you're going to start your reading in this week, and you'll see in the middle of the page here, they've got some HTML tags kind of laid out, and it sort of looks like a family tree or something like that. What they're trying to describe to you here is the document object model for a particular page. And if you remember when we talked about document object model, that has to do with how your HTML elements are structured on your HTML page. All right, so you've got some elements inside other elements. You've got some elements that are like on the same level as other elements. And so it's this idea, sort of like a tree, where a tree branches out. You got the trunk, and then you've got branches that come out, and you may have other branches that split off from that branch, and then you've got leaves on the end of it. So that's kind of the way. That's why they use the document object model tree, or DOM tree for short. So when we're talking about the DOM, we're just talking about how these elements are laid out in relation to one another. Okay. And what they've described here, I just want to show you. I've put together basically an example of that. This is basically the structure that uh, they're describing in the tree that they're displaying on that one page, where you've got this outer div here, and then inside that outer div you've got an unordered list, a UL tag, right? And that UL tag has two LI elements inside of it. And then for this LI element here, it's got two span tags in it. And for this LI element, it's got a single bold tag inside of it. So if you look at the page is kind of unexciting, right? This is what the page looks like if you actually view it in a browser. But this is the structure behind the scenes. So this portion of considering jQuery is about kind of moving up and down inside this document object model, right? So for example, maybe I've created a jQuery selector that's going to select this LI tag, but I want to move up the document object model tree and access its parent. So basically I want to move from here and select instead the UL tag. Well, jQuery provides ways to do that. Or I could go in the other direction, and instead of accessing the parent, I could go down and access one of these children of this LI tag. Okay, so that's what we're going to be looking at in this particular session. And they make some, as you're looking at this structure here, they make some comments. Note that the div element is the parent of UL, right? So it's the parent of this tag, and it's and an ancestor of everything inside it. So for all of these elements that are inside the div, that div is an ancestor element of those other elements, right? Those elements would be considered to be descendants of the div tag. All right. The UL element is the parent of both of the LI elements. So here's the UL element, and it's the parent of this LI tag and this LI tag as well. But it's also a child of the div tag. So as you're talking about these languages, like I said, just like with a family tree, you've got ancestors and you've got descendants, you've got parents and children, you've got grandchildren, you've got grandparents, right? You've got siblings. They note here that the two LI elements, because they're on the same level in this tree, these LI elements are siblings of one another, okay? And this LI element has two children, two span tags here, but these children are also the grandchildren of this UL element up here, and they're the great-grandchildren of the div element at the top, okay? So hopefully that sort of, it makes sense as you consider a family tree, and then think about the way that the information is structured within an HTML page, okay? So what I've actually done is we're just going to go through ancestors and descendants in this particular session. And I've created a simple page here called examples.html. It's just a list of test scores from random students. It's not you guys, but it's just a list of test scores of some fictitious students, Bill, Dan, and Rob, okay? And so if you remember, I told you that a lot of times some of the stuff that I do on my job, most of the stuff that I do on my job, I'm using JavaScript to manipulate HTML pages that I didn't construct, right? So I have no control over how that HTML is laid out. I don't have any control over whether or not they put ID tags, ID attributes inside certain elements, or classes, applied classes, or anything like that. It's just that HTML is just presented to me, and then I use JavaScript or jQuery to manipulate that HTML and make it look like the way I want it to look, or make it interact with the user in the way I want it to interact. And so, we've basically learned with jQuery, the power of jQuery is how you can select certain elements in the page. And then once you build the proper selector to select that element, then you can do things with it. Like if I've selected a particular element, I could hide that element from the page, or I could show it on the page, right? I could apply some sort of style to that element on the page. I could add an event so that if they click that element on the page, something else happens, right? So those are some of the things that we've learned how to do, but it all starts with being able to select the appropriate element, right? So this is just another way to select elements on the page if you don't have IDs, like we set up in our HTML, or you don't have classes applied to it or something like that, right? So we've got these lists of test scores, all right, and we'll check out the HTML that's set up for that. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to hit F12 here, and the cool thing about the debugger is that if you over here on the left-hand side, you'll have your files that are associated with this particular page. In this case, it's just my examples.html file, and then the jQuery library that I'm referencing. And so if I click on examples.html, if it's not already showing up here, once you click on that file, it'll show the source for the page. And so I can actually look at what's in that page. And so if we take a look at the page, we can kind of see this parent-child relationship in the way that the HTML has been constructed, right? So here's our body tag, and then a child of the body tag is this div tag. And then inside the div tag, it has some children. It has an h2 tag here, it has a div tag here, a div tag here, and a div tag here, right? And if we scroll down a little bit, we'll see that that's basically the end of it. At that point, the div tag closes, and the body tag closes, and the HTML tag closes. Okay, but note that this h2, this div, and this div, they're all siblings of one another, and they're all children of this div tag here. Well, some of these children also have children. So like this div tag here has a couple of children. It has an h3 tag, and then it also has a ul tag. And so these children, in addition to being children of the div tag, they're also grandchildren of this outer div tag here, right? And then there's some siblings here inside this UL tag. It has some children, and it has 3 siblings, which represent the test scores on our page. So here's what we're going to do. You notice in this particular HTML, the only thing that has any kind of ID or class that we can reference is the div tag surrounding the actual students, right? So for each of these students, there's an ID: student 1, student 2, and student 3. All right, so let's look at how we would select. In this case, we're going to start with start looking at ancestors. And so we're going to pick a particular child, and then we're going to try to do something to its parent or to its grandparent. Okay, so let's start with student 2. All right, we're gonna target this guy here. So the way that we would target that guy is we would write a jQuery selector, right? That basically is $ open parentheses, double quote, £. Some of you forgot the £sign in the last assignment. That's how you reference a particular element if you're referencing that element by ID, right? So £, student 2. All right, and that's going to basically select this div tag here. All right, because that's got an ID of student 2. All right, but what we want to actually do, let's say that we want to we could do, now that we've got that selected, some of the things we've done in the past is we could hide that, see it goes away over here, or then we could bring it back, we could show it, right? But let's say we want to do something to the parent, right? This outer div tag here. All right, so how would we do that? Well, we would select our student, and then when we say parent, we would call the parent function. And what the parent function does is it takes wherever your current selector is, and then it selects the parent, the immediate parent of that particular element, right? So we selected this first, and then we said select the parent, and so now we've basically selected that outer div. And I can prove that to you because we'll do something to it. We'll change the CSS for that outer div, and look, it's already prompting me to do something that I've done previously. So we'll set the border for that outer div tag to be solid red and 5 pixels wide. So if I hit enter there, sure enough, it puts a red border around that entire div tag. So it applied it to this element up here. All right. So pretty cool, huh? Um, if you we selected that using the parent function. So we traversed up the DOM to select that parent, right? In addition to parent, you've also got parents, and parents is more useful if you're wanting to do something to a few levels up. Usually is how you would use that. Or maybe you want to go up from where you are currently, but you want to select a particular parent. So maybe you're inside of a table and you've an HTML table and you've selected one of the cells in there, but you want to select the parent table tag. And so let me show you how you might go about doing something like that. In this case, what am I going to do? I'm going to, you know what, let's make a small adjustment to our HTML. So in addition to putting an ID tag on the student, I'm just going to stick, just for the sake of this example, I'm going to put an ID on this LI tag right here. Okay, and we're just going to call it, the ID is just going to be Dan middle score. All right, so that's our ID for that guy. Let's save that change, and we'll go back over here to our page, and we'll refresh our page to make sure that that's there. So we can see now that that LI tag has that on it. So let's select that particular LI tag by doing this. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. Let me just copy it from here. So now we've selected that element. We can prove that by adding, we'll just hide it real quick to show that we've selected it. So it hides from the page over here. It's missing now. We'll bring that back. Let's just, I'll do little things like that. Just to make sure that I've got my selector constructed properly, right? So now what I want to do is I want to select a parent of this LI tag, but I don't want to select the immediate parent, right? If I did, I want to do the same thing I did before, where I add a border to the outer div. But if I just say if I just do parent like this, and then do CSS border, border solid one, solid red, 5 pixels. If I do that, it's only going to add a border to the div that's immediately around, I'm sorry, it's only going to add a border to the parent that's immediately, that's the immediate parent of this particular LI tag. So in this case, it just added a border to my UL tag, right? So we only got a border around here. I don't want a border around there. I want a border around the entire outer div, right? This portion of the page up here. So how am I going to do that? Well, I could do a couple of things. I could do this. This is kind of cool. I could say, instead of getting the first parent, let me go to the second parent, and I could go to the second parent and add a border. That gets a little bit closer to what we want, right? But I need to go one more parent. So that basically went from here to the UL, that got the first parent, and then we went up from that and got the parent of it, which got us to here. So now we're on this level, and we've added a border. All right, but I want to go one more level up. So I could add like another dot parent in there if I wanted to. I could say dot parent. Now this time I should be able to, and I'll change the outer color to blue just to show some distinction. Now I should have that I'm basically selecting the great grandparent, right, of my LI tag. So this one selected the parent, this call here selected the grandparent, and this call here selected the great grandparent, right? So we could do something like that if we wanted to, but there's actually an easier way. What I could do instead is I could select parents instead of just parent. I could select parents, and I want to select the first. I'm going to select the parent that is the a parent div tag. So it's gonna grab all of the parents of my LI tag, but it's only going to grab the parents that are div tags. Okay, and then we'll set the border to blue. So let's see what happens when I do that. Ooh, look at there. We're getting closer, but the problem is there were actually 2 parents that were div tags, right? This one here was a div tag, and then the great grandparent was also a div tag. So that's not quite what I want. I need to adjust that a little bit more. How are we going to do that? So instead of just doing div tag, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, and let's see, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves because I think I may be talking about something that is in a future lesson, but we're going to go ahead and do it anyway, right? So we're going to say, we're going to go up and we're going to say, grab the parents, the divs that are the parents. But as we go up the tree, I want to get the first div that we encounter. Okay, now let me just hit enter so you can see what happens. All right, so what this did is it returned all of the parents, all the parent divs for this li tag here, right? Which means it returned this and it returned this. But what the EQ0 says is it says, I want you to return it when the div equals the first div that you encounter. Okay, remember, it's just like with arrays. The first cell in the array starts with its ID 0 basically, and so this is 0 based as well. So if I want to get the first element, first div that's returned in that parent hierarchy, then I do 0. Well, we don't want the first one though. We actually want the second one, right? So let's clear that out and try it one more time. So we want to do this. So get all the parent divs, but return the second one that comes, select the second one that comes back, and then apply the border to that. And if I do that, sure enough, I've now got a border on this great grandparent of my li tag, which turned out to be the second div tag that I encounter as I traverse up the DOM. Okay. All right, so we're going to now do the reverse of that, and let's talk about descendants a little bit, right? So with descendants, you've got two main functions that you can call, and that is children and find. All right, so let's say, for example, again, we're going to work with this. Let me clear this page. We're going to work with div ID student 2. Okay, so let's select that guy again, pound student 2. That's what we had used before, and what we want to do is we want to select all the children inside student 2, and we want to, I don't know, we'll apply let's adjust the font, the color of that text, and we'll make the color of that text blue. Okay, so we'll say for every child, so children, we call the children function, we want to apply CSS to it, and what that CSS does is it's going to set the color of the text there to be blue. All right, so if I run that, let's see what happens. Check it out. So what it did is it actually it changed the color attribute to be blue for both the H3 tag and for the UL tag. Now, it didn't explicitly do it for these LIs here because those LIs are grandchildren. They're not children. It only grabbed the children of it, the direct children of it, so the H3 tag and the UL tag, but it in essence applied a style here to this and a style here to this. And we can actually see that if you right click on this and choose inspect, it'll take you to the actual what the new version of the HTML is as you're manipulating that with JavaScript. And so you can see here that sure enough, for student ID, for the div with the ID student 2, it set the color to blue for the H3 tag and the color to blue for the UL tag, but it didn't do it for these LI tags. Okay. What if we wanted to do it for the LI tags? Well, the way that so what if we don't want to just access elements that are one level down? We want to access elements that are multiple levels down, right? So what you can use for that is find instead of children. So find, we'll find children, grandchildren, great grandchildren. It'll go all the way down, traverse the tree all the way down to the furthest way that you can search all through the furthest level down beneath an element. So find is what we'd want to use for that. So let's try find instead. So let me refresh here, and let's say we don't want to make all of the children blue. We just want to make these LI tags here blue. Okay. So let's try that again. So instead of children, I'm going to do find. And what I want to find is every LI tag that's below that particular div. Okay. So I do that and I set the CSS color to blue. So let me run that. Sure enough, look, only these guys are blue now. And if I inspect that, I can go over here and I can see that, yep, it applied this color blue style to all of the LI tags that were children of student 2. All right, so Pretty powerful stuff. You know, again, if you can use the EQ tag that I just showed you. We're going to see that in a future video. But what if I only wanted to make the third score blue? I could say find LIs, but only when the LI equals the third one, right? We start with 0 in our counting, the third one that's found, and then set the color blue to that. And when I do that, sure enough, only the 85 here is set to blue. All right, so that's enough, at least for you guys to think about for this video. We'll have another one shortly that will talk about siblings and filtering. All right, and we'll be done for this week. Have a good one.